Thank you so much for coming to check out the Stash Cast, where we have interesting conversations with interesting people focused on the world of commercial real estate and prop tech. The Stash Cast is brought to you by Needle. What if you could use data and analytics to predict real estate transactions before they occur? You can with Needle. Check it out at Needle, NEDL.us to learn more. All right, I have my good friend Jeremy Fritzhand with us today. Jeremy, why don't we dive in? Why don't you tell the people who you are and what you do?
Hey everybody, I'm Jeremy Fritzhand. I serve as Director of Startup Services at Alloy Growth Lab, a leading top 10 business incubator in the world. And I work with founders and their teams wherever they need me. One day I'm bug testing software, another day writing press releases. So I'm in the trenches, solving problems, making connections, and trying to save the world in my free time.
Yeah, I've found that you are very knowledgeable. You're very good at what you do. So I'll tell you that. And you've been super helpful to us as we've gotten going and off the ground. And I'm very impressed. So thank you for all your help getting us to where we're at so far.
Oh, you're welcome. It's always fun working with people that are passionate about what they're doing.
Yeah, we definitely are. You work at Alloy, you help with startups, but you have your own startup too, don't you?
Yeah, I have a couple personal projects I'm working on. Most of my entrepreneurial journey has been focused in impact work. I spent almost 10 years working in India, doing grassroots entrepreneurial development work in the artisan sector, connecting a group of block printing artisans in a place called Bagru to their markets around the world.
That's amazing. All these things that you're doing, how did you arrive in the chair that you're at now? Because I couldn't even conceptualize figuring out how to do that. Like, how did you end up there for 10 years?
Yeah, so it all started in 2009. I was a senior in college. I signed up for a 21-day term abroad to India with the head of the economics department at my college and the anthropology professor. My classmates and I were in a bus every other day traveling to a new city. One day we were in Jaipur, which is the capital of Rajasthan, and we took a day trip to a place called Bagru, Bagru, where for the last almost 450 years, they've been mastering the craft of hand block printing, which is an ancient textile printing technique that dates back thousands of years. And in Bagru, they've been mastering it for almost 400 plus years. We were given a tour of the village by one of the artisans, and that's when I had an aha moment. My college had a social entrepreneurial fellowship grant for graduates that wanted to move abroad and either work with an existing organization or start their own project. So I wrote a proposal first to the anthropologist who had done her research there that I wanted to move there and live with the artist and work on some sort of collaborative project. And she found an artist that was interested in collaborating and wrote a proposal, was accepted. And in June of 2010, after graduating with my bachelor's in psychology, I packed up a backpack and I moved to Agru. And what was supposed to be 10 months quickly turned into 3 years. Came back for my MBA, was in the corporate side of supply chain management for about a year. And then the rest of the time from 2016 until end of 2021 was in India before I moved back to the US. I moved back to Cincinnati, hometown, and was eager to embed myself back into an ecosystem of startups and people passionate about growing business and the economy, and found an amazing opportunity at Alloy, and the rest is history.
I can't imagine going from a village in India where you're helping folks with hand block printing, then going to business school and then ending up in logistics. That must be like completely different worlds.
Yeah, it was definitely, I was on one side of the spectrum, like grassroots, handmade, and then the other side of the spectrum, which is like fast fashion, mass production, consumption. So it was, I was really interested to understand how it worked at that other side of the spectrum. So I found another opportunity and was able to find an organization that saw opportunity also in working with me. So yeah.
That's so cool. I didn't know that about you until now. So learn something new every day. It seems though, knowing how I know you, it seems like that avenue of that passion for helping people is something that is means a lot to you. And that's because that's what you do with us. We'll hop on a call and you're like, all right, where are we at with those things? And I find that to be super helpful. So it's interesting.
Yeah, knowledge sharing has always been like a central tenet of all my work. And because I remember how curious I was in my early entrepreneurial days and asking a lot of questions. Not everybody was open about how they got to where they were or the trade secrets of entrepreneurship. And a lot of it was like learning from mistakes, failing, and figuring out what didn't work. And so I always knew that one thing I would never do would be like gatekeep knowledge and connections. And so that's the first thing I'm always offering is shared contacts and solutions and
Yeah.
ideas.
Yeah, I've noticed that about you. I was going to California back in December, and you're like, here's all these VCs in California. And I was like, oh my God, this would have taken me like months to compile all that data. And you were just like, yeah, here it is. That was super helpful. So thank you. I didn't actually end up getting any meetings with those folks, but I tried. So, what do you think influenced you to get into entrepreneurship and the tech world?
Yeah, I've always been really interested in technology. I think like my some of my earliest memories, we had we had an early Apple computer at home playing basic games on there, and then in school, in primary school, they had the old Macs that were running like the green screens, and you had like Math Blaster and Oregon Trail, and then the PCs came along. My brother had gotten a Sim Tower game, and I installed Sim Tower on all the computers in our classroom. And so everybody was like really into building these skyscrapers. It's actually a great game for early entrepreneurs because like you have to put the condos in one place, you have to put the shops in the right place, the single hotel rooms, the double hotel rooms. You have to make sure that you're scaling up your housekeeping services to make sure there's no like cockroaches that start appearing in the rooms.
Yeah.
Perfect for today's conversation.
Yeah, I used to play that and SimCity 2000 as well as a kid. So I had the cheat codes though. So.
Oh yeah, definitely. I was always like going underground to the far left and building a condo, and then you get like $4 million to start with.
Oh, that's so clever. I didn't even think about that. That's awesome. Um, Man, that's cool. So with your involvement in entrepreneurship and the tech startup, I'm just curious, what have you seen has led some entrepreneurs to be the most successful? And then maybe you could talk on the flip side. What are the things that you've seen that have maybe limited people's ability to get traction, even if they had maybe a great idea?
Yeah, there's always outliers for different strategies. And even if I say you have to do your validation first, I'm sure there's people that have built products because they had a personal problem and it ended up working out. But generally, some of the first advice that we give is that you have to validate the solution that you have by making sure it's a real world problem that people want solved. And the best way to do that is through interviews and surveys, and so like finding out who your market is, and then talking to those people, talking about what they're currently using for a solution, asking what do they wish they had, creating surveys so that you can show the results. If you are going like the venture route and you want to raise capital, being able to show that validation through the customer interviews and the structured survey results are really powerful numbers that add to the validation of your idea. Step one has always in my coaching is always about like validating your solution through interviews and surveys. And then from there, You have to create some sort of minimal viable product or MVPs for folks that are building a tech solution, whether it's a SaaS, software as a service, or any sort of online platform, creating the MVP or the what is the minimum viable feature set that you can offer to a customer. And sometimes that's like using other solutions. So you're using maybe you're just using like a Google form or a Google Doc and you're embedding it in your website, and maybe it's a framework that you're charging for, and at first maybe it can just be a document, or it's like putting together a couple different existing tech solutions into that MVP instead of like necessarily going out and like building a full-fledged tech platform right away, because unless you have that knowledge, the technical background to either build it yourself, it can get pretty pricey. And so I also suggest nowadays, if I suggest to founders, if you can't build it yourself, maybe you shouldn't be exploring that solution, because there's an incredible amount of capital and resources and time that go into building tech platforms.
Yeah. Yeah, there definitely is. Do you ever get somebody like I'm in my position as a founder because I had a problem that I was seeking to solve. But it seems to me, and maybe you solve it through the process you just talked about, but it seems so presumptuous to me for somebody to be like, oh, I'm going to go and disrupt whatever industry it is, and they have no experience in that. Do you ever see that? And do you ever have to talk people off the ledge from going and spending a whole lot of time, money, and otherwise to do things like that?
Yeah, it does happen. One of my startup superpowers, they asked when I joined Alloys, what's your startup superpower? And so mine has always been like eternal belief in the in founders' ability to succeed. So make like believing that anybody can be successful, whatever they're trying to do. It really just takes like resilience and dedication and passion towards what they're doing. And if you stick at it long enough, you're going to find success. Some people find it in a few years. Some people, it takes a few decades. Some people, they spend their whole life trying to solve that problem, and they're still never able to make it to profitability. And so there are outliers. So there's always outliers that do go after pie in the sky ideas that maybe they don't have any experience with or background, but they learn and they're dedicated, they're passionate about doing it. And so my goal again is to try to give the resources, share contacts, introductions that can increase their knowledge of that field, of what they're trying to solve, and then taking the different like the processes of the entrepreneurial journey, like from ideation to validation to MVP, traction, scaling, and then after you're scaling and you're growing, what a lot of entrepreneurs are going after is an exit. And so they plan 5, 10 years down the line, once they have 10,000, 20,000, 100,000 users and X amount of revenue, that they're going to sell their company to a competitor or a big player in the industry. And yes, to answer your question, yes, we definitely see folks that don't necessarily have any experience or background in the field that they're pursuing. I'm never one to say, hey, you shouldn't do that. I usually try to say, "Hey, if you're going to do this, these are the steps that you need to take in order to be successful." And again, it's not going to be an overnight thing. It's going to take years, decades, possibly, to achieve those goals.
That is true. I'm wondering, have you seen any parallels between your early work in India and what you're doing now?
Yeah, a lot of parallels. Every day, I think we get a new application or there's a startup that comes across the desk in a field I know nothing about. And so while I don't know anything about that niche, whether it's like an advanced material or a pharma or any other range of startup ideas, the first I try to learn about the market. Who are the competitors in the market? what is the next best thing. A lot of founders, they say, oh, nobody's done this before, or this is a totally unique solution. And so one of the first things that I'm doing on my side is to figure out, okay, if nobody's done that, what's the next best thing that people have done? How long have they been around? How many customers do they have? Who are the customers? How much are they charging for their solution? What path did they take to profitability? And then using that as like the guardrails of this is what they're doing. How are you going to do it better? How are you going to do it for less money? How are you going to add more value? And yeah, I think that's been the approach.
hmm I'm thinking about nobody's ever done this before. And I wonder if maybe there's a reason. Just because it hasn't been done, maybe there's a reason behind that. But I guess if I had thought about that, I wouldn't have started on my own journey. So you talked a little bit about investors and raising capital. What have you seen or found as to be the best ways to build and then cultivate relationships with prospective investors in startup ideas? And what are they looking for?
Yeah, the first step of the investor relations strategy that I work on with founders is research and finding the short list of investors that are aligned with your product or service and your vision. And so first you create your own database of those folks. You go to their web, if they have a formal pitch process, send your pitch deck to this email address or fill out this form online. And so you always want to go by whatever their formal process is. If they don't have anything specifically on their website, go to their LinkedIn, go to their LinkedIn page, follow their LinkedIn page so they see that you're actually interested. See what they're posting, engage with their posts. And then in LinkedIn, you can also see the people associated with the organization. Usually you can find in the VC world, it's like a deal flow associate or analyst. And so you can go to those folks' pages, follow them. Sometimes you can just send a connection. Always be sure to add a note in your connection. If you, and again, you shouldn't do that if they have a formal intake process. You always want to follow like their formal process because that can definitely rub them the wrong way if you're not like going what's obvious there on their website. Otherwise, they are looking for deals. They're looking for the next greatest startup, and but they are also looking for that exit too. So if you're thinking you don't want to sell your company, that might not be the best route for you. You can look for non-dilutive options, which are grant opportunities where you don't have to give up any equity in your business. You can go for pitch competitions; those are all over. And so you can go for innovation challenges. There's a site called innovationchallenge.com. You can see a lot of different innovation challenges out there. And so, yeah, that's been the investor strategy. You want to make sure that you have a data room ready. And so there's actually a great data room checklist that we include in our morning mentoring program at Alloy. So if you go to morningmentoring.com, there's a link to some resources on that page. In that link, it's a Google Drive folder. You'll see a data room checklist. You can make a copy of that document, and then you can go through all of the different, from finance to legal to your pitch deck, your executive summary, all the different documents that you need to have ready. Because when you start making those contacts with folks that are in the fundraising world, they're going to want specific documents. And then if they're double clicking on your application, if you get into a due diligence process where they're starting to dig deeper, they're learning about your background, they want to see all the legal frameworks, they want to know what the actual investment vehicle that you're using, if it's safe, if it's like preferred stock. They want to see how is that all structured. So a data room is a great place that you can start building that out. You can create your own shared folder where you're keeping those documents, and then share specific documents or create another shared folder depending on who you're talking with.
hmm How do you balance everything that you've got going on? Because you work with Ally or Alloy, excuse me, and you've got your own projects that you're working on? How do you keep it all straight?
Yeah, I keep a very religious inbox zero. So I never let my inbox go over one page. And so that makes sure that nothing like stacks up. It does mean that I'm like online all the time, but I try not to let an email sit in my inbox for more than a day or two without responding. I think that's a pretty good policy to have, especially in this world. People want quick answers. I keep a very religiously tight calendar. And so I try not to be late or cancel, reschedule any meetings. Of course, sometimes it happens. There's an eclipse and you have to pause what you're doing to see a once in a lifetime event, or different life events come up, emergencies, of course. For me, it's trying to hold myself to that schedule. At the same time, I'm always on my phone. It definitely cuts into my personal life. I do feel like I'm at the really good flow state in my career, and just staying like up to date on everything, making sure that I'm replying on time. And then going for a walk every now and then is nice. Make sure that you're spending time with family, you're giving your loved ones the attention that they need.
Yeah.
Preparing for the future too, down the line. If you see anything coming up, make sure that you're planning according for those events. We have a lot of event programming alloys. One thing I do is create timelines for major projects. When you're 6 months out, 5 months, 4 months, 3 months for different deliverables, make sure that you set those milestones for yourself so that things don't creep up on you.
Yeah. Professional challenges that you've faced and overcome through your journey so far.
Oh, there's been a lot for sure. Just in terms of deciding what directions to do, whether it's a career change or a move or those sorts of things, figuring out like when my wife and I decided that we were going to move back to the US, that was a major change. And we have a company in India that has been running since 2016. And so making the decision, all right, we're going to run the company remotely. We're going to move to the US, and taking the proper preparations for that, making sure that there's standard operating procedures in place, that there's all the what ifs are taken in terms of whether it's finances, you have contingency plans if things go wrong, always planning, always thinking of worst case scenarios, and then running the multiple scenarios, and what happens if this goes on, and so that you have an answer ready for all those things. Of course, there's going to be things that you could never have imagined in business and life, and at least for me it's helped a lot to go through those what ifs and have contingency plans in worst case scenarios.
I didn't know that you had a company in India. What do you guys do?
So the company is called Studio Bagru. And so that's part of the original work that we started back in 2010, where we promote craft. We run workshops to educate people about the handmade industry. We hold those workshops in Bagru, but we also hold them around the world. We've had workshops in the Philippines, in Japan, in the UK, Switzerland, in the US. And so we bring blocks. So the blocks are, I don't have one around here, but oh, I have this, which is a block printed. This is one of the first block printed labels we made.
Huh.
So where you see the design, that's actually a wooden block. And then if
Right.
using ink, you print on the fabric. And so this was like the hang tag that we made for some of our products. And so a lot of people don't know about these handmade techniques that date back thousands of years. And now in the last 50 years, as the world's become more globalized, there's more modern techniques and more mass consumption, people have forgotten about these techniques. And there's a whole nother conversation there with the issue of fast fashion, which is the corporatization of clothing. If we look just like 1 or 2 generations ago, folks would buy a piece of clothing and keep it for 10, 15 years. When it had holes or was ripped, it would be mended. And nowadays, with all these fast fashion brands, people buy things and throw them. They wear something once or twice and then throw it away. Some major stats like 85% of clothing that's manufactured every year ends up in a landfill the same year. And
Oh,
textile and apparel production is argued behind oil and gas as the third biggest pollutant in our world and one of the main contributors to microplastics in the ocean. So a lot of our work at Studio Bagru is educating people about why it's important to support handmade, why it's important to consider buying things before you get something new, support locally made, local designers, independent designers, thrift if you can, if you're okay with that. I'm not saying that you shouldn't buy anything new or don't go to the mall, but small changes in your consumption habits can have like really big impact.
yeah, I've noticed that. Like, I've got some pieces of clothing that I just love, and you can't find a replacement for it. And so it's been mended a couple of times. I've got this jacket that I bought like 15 years ago, and the elbows are all worn out, and I've had to have it fixed. But yeah, and then on the other hand, my closet is overflowing with clothes, and I have way too many, and it just is what it is, I guess. It's a society that we're in.
Yeah, there's billions and billions of dollars that are spent on marketing and advertising by these brands to convince consumers that they have to buy something new, that things are going out of style, that this design is the latest and greatest, and it's rewired the way that we consume clothing and our relationship with clothing as well.
Yeah, and it's funny because the trends repeat. Because I heard that in the 90s when I was a kid, and now you're starting to see. I saw something on Instagram that Jenko jeans are coming back. I was like, oh my
Oh,
God.
nice.
So yeah, you just got to hold on to them. I don't know. What are some projects or initiatives that you've completed? You've got a bunch of them, but or that you've been involved in that would you say you're most proud of?
Yeah, we last year at Alloy we started Ohio Accelerate. So Ohio Accelerate is a collaboration with Ohio X, which is a statewide trade organization, and they bring together folks in business, in corporate, small business, civic, government, together, connecting people across the state. And we launched this initiative called Ohio Accelerate as a statewide pitch mentorship program. Using some of the best practices from morning mentoring, we created a pitch program. Last year, it took place in one day. We had three startups that participated. And so the way that it was organized was that they gave their pitch at the beginning of the program, and then they split into breakout rooms with mentors. This all took place virtually. And so each breakout room had a different subject expertise, marketing, finance, and I think fundraising. And so the participants talked with the mentors about their challenges, and then the mentors filled out a scorecard and a feedback form. Ended up being 7, 8 pages of really valuable, honest feedback. And then the startups were also connected with this statewide mentor network. And so it was a very successful program. And we actually were awarded excellence in innovation by the Ohio Economic Development Association. So we ran the program again this year. We reorganized it. The program this year, we have 4 participants, and the program started by them recording a pitch. And then the mentors reviewed the pitch, filled out a scorecard and feedback form. We compiled that and shared it with the participants. And then so that was in February. In March, it was like mentor office hours. So the founders could schedule time with the mentors. We've had over 30 mentors in the group. And so each week they were meeting with different subject matter experts, some from legal background, a go-to-market background, storytelling, branding, product development, strategic partnerships, all different areas around the startup journey. And now we're in April. So April, they have virtual live pitches. So each Thursday they give a 10-minute pitch, 40 minutes of Q&A. They get 10 minutes to ask questions of the mentors, fill out a second round of feedback and a scorecard. We compile that and send it to the participant. And this year, Ohio Accelerate culminates at the Ohio Tech Summit, which is taking place on May 16th up at Ohio State University. And so they'll give a live pitch in front of over 300 leaders from across the state, and a winner will be announced. And then they have access to this wide mentor network. They're introduced to the different entrepreneurial support organizations. I think in the applications, we had over 30 startups apply to the program this year. Last year, I think we had 7 applications, so it's grown tremendously. And there was over 30 also entrepreneurial support organizations that the applicants said that they were attached to. So we're trying to bring all those organizations together as well and make sure that there's shared communication and resources. There's parts of the state that don't have as much resource support, and so we try to point the founders in the right direction for those services. Oftentimes they're free too. There's state and federal dollars that are supporting these organizations to help startups grow.
So why, in your opinion, do you think Ohio is a great place for startups?
Besides being the heart of it all, there's been a lot of excitement in the tech world for Ohio. Intel just made a huge investment here for their chip factory. I think that more than on the coast, you get a lot of attention and folks that are really authentic and dedicated to helping startups. And it's a more, I think, personalized experience. And there are a lot of resources if people connect with the right people. I think there is a little bit of, there could be more kind of resource sharing, but I think, again, Ohio does a good job of collaborating. And so we're working with organizations across the state, whether it's Jumpstart in Cleveland or Rev1 in Columbus, any of the other entrepreneurial support orgs. Everybody is playing the role of compass too, trying to connect these budding startups with the folks that can help them grow.
It's awesome. How does one get involved in the pitch competition that you mentioned?
Yes, we'll probably run another program either at the end of this year or again early next year. So you can go to Ohio Accelerate, OhioXcelerate.com, and bookmark that page. You can also find the LinkedIn page. If you follow Alloy or myself on LinkedIn, you'll see us posting about it. That's one way to step in. And again, it's based on a program that we run at Alloy with the Queen City Angels. It's called Morning Mentoring. You can go to morningmentoring.com to learn more about that too.
Yeah, and we went through that, and that was a great experience. Awesome. Jeremy, what is the best way for founders or those maybe interested in becoming a founder to get in touch with you?
Yeah, the best way is to connect on LinkedIn. You can, find me on LinkedIn. It's .com/Fritzhand, Fritzhand, where you can spell out my full name, which you should see in the title of this podcast.
Yep. Awesome. Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us today, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
All right. Thanks, Dash.